This is It's an Inside Job, and I'm your host, Jason Lim. This is the show where we explore the stories, strategies, and science behind growing resilience, nurturing well-being, and leading with intent. Because when it comes down to it, it's all an inside job. Hey folks, welcome back to the show. I am glad you could join me for another Monday, the top of this week, where we will jump into another long-form conversation. And so today we are going to continue that thread that we talk about quite often on this podcast is leadership. Leadership of oneself, but also leadership of others. And so leadership today isn't just about managing tasks. It's about guiding people through uncertainty while staying grounded, finding the foundation for yourself. And so in this episode, we're talking about what it really takes to lead in times of complexity and constant change. So let me ask you this. How do you stay decisive and authentic as a leader when the world around you keeps shifting? Well, today I'm joined by Marianne Hagen. She's the CEO of Randstad, Norway. With over 27 years of leadership experience across consulting, recruitment, and organizational development, Marianne brings a deep expertise in workforce strategy, digital transformation, and building resilient people-first cultures. So in this conversation, we unpack a number of things. How to lead with authenticity while aligning business demands with human needs. We're also going to be talking about practical ways to foster trust, transparency, and psychological safety on your team, and why a leader's ability to reflect and reset is a critical part of long-term effectiveness. And the most significant insight we discussed, and the one I think will truly have an effect on your perspective on leadership, leadership of others, and leadership of yourself, that will come at the very end of the episode. So without further ado, let's slip into the stream and meet Marianne Hagen. Marianne, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jason. Finally, I got her. I listened so many times to your podcast, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we've been trying to find a date, and finally we landed on one. So here we are. Could you kindly introduce who you are and briefly what you do?
Yes, I'm Marianne Hagen. I'm from Oslo, but I lived abroad with my family for 12 years. I actually are the leader for Randstad in Norway, and Randstad is a global company. We are actually the biggest one in HR. Having said that, we're working a lot with digital, IT consultants, healthcare, and also a lot with recruitment and temp and taking over, fabrics. And so it's about people. I usually say, if I should say it quickly, and that's very difficult, it's workforce solutions for a company. So we're trying to mix business and people and making good solutions for them. That is flexible, of course.
We've had the privilege of working together cross-functionally with the company, running leadership workshops, where mine was kind of focused on resilience and such, and yours are obviously on leadership. And that's where the confluence of our knowledge and our experience come together today, because I'd like to tap into your deep knowledge and experience and talk about leadership, many aspects of it. But right now, a lot of organizations are going through change and complexity, considering the world dynamics, foreign affairs, the geopolitics of everything, and how that influences organizations at many different levels. Perhaps we could speak about that. What are some of your opinions about how we should show up as leaders in complexity, in change, in challenges?
It's always difficult to talk about that because, as you, I'm also consultants. One of my backgrounds is that I've been a leadership consultant for 25 years. And in addition, I am a leader. So sometimes it's difficult to be a consultant because then you can come with all the good advices and then you suddenly are a leader and you understand it's a huge difference between theory and reality. Having said that, I, of course, have some beliefs that I think I bring with me, but it doesn't mean, Jason, that I always turn up like that, or I'm not making mistakes, because I do a lot. But I believe in authentic leadership. And I think that that's one of the core things for me, that I need to accept the role, and I need to see if my personal fit puts into the role. And I also totally understand that there's a difference between being Marianne and being the leader. The authority you have, the power you have, that's not in me. And that's also why I used to say that good leaders also balance, with a work life. So I have a lot of my time outside job is as important as my job. Having said that, my job is more than a job for me, because I love my job. But I'm not taking away that I also need something outside to have the balance, if you say that. I really believe in self-awareness. And I think that is one of the things that is actually building, that we speak so much about today, this kind of psychology, safety, trust, and all of that. And I think you can't have that if you're not willing to get feedback, or look at yourself in the mirror, or, get this kind of real feedback from others. And I also think that leadership is, I don't think you can lead anything. I think you need to be a fit for the company, the values, the drivers, and that you actually believe in where you're going. If not, it will be very, very difficult to be standing in all of the changes that you will do, and you also the things that it require that you actually do in the leader role.
You've been through large-scale transformations across borders and across industries. When you find yourself in that complexity, in that uncertainty, what anchors you as a leader?
First of all, my values. I'm really, really anchored to my values, and that comes from my family. I think we were very value-driven from my, when I grew up, and I really know my values. I totally understand that I need to accept my role, and there will be things that I don't agree on. But the way I do it needs to be harmonizing with who I am and the role, of course, but also my values. So one of my values is authentic, for instance. So I need to do it authentic. And I need to do it the way that I can feel that I actually am not losing myself in my role. I have accepted the role, but I can't lose myself in it, if you understand.
Let's go there, because I think that's very, very important, because sometimes we can lose ourselves when there is so much coming at us. So what is it? How does Marianne define being authentic, or what is authenticity for you?
For me, I think it's not being a robot. It's not just doing things because my leader are telling me to do it. So, and it's not to be a buddy either. It's to accepting the full role that I'm the leader. But if I get the message, and I think all leaders on a certain level have got, you need to do this, I really need to find my own story, and I need to believe in it. It might be that I don't agree, but I really need to believe in the story. Because if I tell you a story, Jason, and I don't believe in it myself, I'm just bringing you a message and you won't follow me. So leadership for me is about getting followers, like social media. And you will never follow me. I can ask you a question, why should I be led by you? And I got that question several times, and it's a book, with that question. I keep asking myself, why should people follow me? And I need to be able to answer that. And they should follow me because I'm authentic. I will always be fair. I will always do it in a respectful way, hopefully. But it doesn't mean that you will like what I do, and it doesn't mean that you agree with what I do. But I really would like to keep my self-respect as well. That's also important. So I think for me, being authentic is not being a robot, but either not being a buddy, but being a leader and accepting like a parent role. It's very easy I have children. It's very easy, when I was small, to give them everything I wanted. But then I haven't taken my role. So I think being a role model also means that you need to take the role for full, meaning also that you need to do something. That's not always everyone agree with that. And it's not a popular competition, to being a leader. It can't be. But I also have heard that I didn't have empathy or I didn't have that, in the situation, even though I thought that. So it could be perceptions as well, Jason. But I think it's good to have an anchor in yourself and that you're trying to do it that way. But it doesn't mean that I turn up like that or that you agree with me, if you understand.
No, I guess I'm speaking for more general terms, not every specific individual.
No.
So when the road is unclear for yourself and for the organization, and the fog of uncertainty is there, being able to tap into your values, understanding what they truly mean to you at a very operational level, that allows you to kind of find your way step by step through the fog of uncertainty, hopefully till you come out on the other side. Yeah. But that is one of the core principles that anchors you through uncertainty.
Yeah.
What are other aspects that you draw from to anchor yourself to help an organization through move?
I need my family. I'm a very unafraid person. The only thing I'm not afraid of is losing, the people that is very, very close to me, the relation I have with my husband and also my children. I think that is core for me. So of course that's my anchor as well. And in additional, I need connections with people around me. Not only at work, I'm talking about outside. And I'm also doing a lot of physical training. That's where I say physical, but it goes mentally for me. So I am a person that could look like I'm very extrovert, but I'm using a lot of time in the wood and running by myself where I really are reflecting. In addition, I have some very good habits for myself. I get up very early in the morning and I have this kind of self-reflection for mentally for myself. You can call it mindfulness or reflection, but I'm both writing, reading, and reflecting. And I'm also looking back and I'm trying to be focused on what I'm grateful about. So when my children were small, I ended the day sitting at their bed and saying, and after a while, they were hoping me to come in quickly enough because I asked them, what are you grateful about during this day? So, you're sleeping with a good mind instead of what I didn't do. So, it's a kind of a growth mindset instead of a fixed. So I'm really trying to look at everything I are grateful about because that gives me energy. I'm very good at finding what I'm not good at. So it's just
welcome to the human race.
Fueling myself. So This is some small tip that I'm doing for myself. But I really know I've never been burned out actually, even though I worked a lot. So I think I found out. I know exactly when the border are where I need to stop when I need to go out and take jogging or doing something else. So I'm working a lot, but I really have this kind of spots where I'm doing other things. Yeah.
So one of the questions I hear you say when you get up early in the morning, maybe, what am I grateful for? That kind of focuses you more on the constructive or the positive side or the optimistic side, things that you're appreciative of. Yeah. Are there a couple of other questions that you tend to ask yourself in sort of in a ritual or as a pattern that you get up in the morning?
Oh, yeah. To focus you? I have different questions depending on where I am and what I need. So I'm pretending I'm my own mentor or coach. No, I think I very often go back and reflecting about the situation that's happened and reflecting about maybe what I did good, but also what I could have done differently. And as a kind of learning approach, if you go back to what's my engine is learning. So I'm not so afraid of doing mistakes, but I'm very afraid of doing the same mistakes and not learning. So I think leadership for me is a journey, like everything else in life. And I will never end up a place because then I'm dead. So in my kind of vision is I'm on my way. If I feel I'm not on the way on some places, whatever it is, I will feel more drained. So the energy of looking back at the situation and reflecting about what I could have done and asking myself the same questions, maybe take another perspective than the other's perspective. What are they thinking about and things like that. And I do that in front of meetings as well. I can role play with myself. I asking 100 questions. I'm not saying I'm having all of the answers, but for me, it helps me to look at different perspectives. And sometimes I know about the perspectives, but I maybe can't take that role, if you understand, but I'm fully aware of it. So, yeah, and that's sometimes takes extremely much time because I'm very analytic, so I go back and forward all the time. And sometimes it takes too much time. But I really feel that the penny drops sometimes, you know. You really feel that you get some answers and that you understand, oh, sorry, shit, now I understand why Jason was so angry, for instance. And now I can understand that perspective. I don't understand why I didn't see that. Because I think we as leaders sometimes are robots, even though we don't want to be that, and that we go in with kind of doing tasks and it's a human in front of you and you just need to execute or do things, and then later on, shit, that was maybe not so respectful or so empathic that I wanted to be, if you understand.
Yeah,
And
thinking about what you've said, it underscores the importance, irregardless of how busy the world is coming at us as people, that the time for reflection is so important. I always connect it to sort of performance, whether it's physical, like running you're talking about, or lifting weights or getting better at something. Half of performance is also recovery time.
yeah.
And we could just replace the word recovery with reflection, because it's through the reflection. Because what I also hear what you're saying, Marianne, is that by asking yourself an assortment of different questions, it can open your perspective up to not only from moving from subjective to objective, but it allows you to reframe a situation that maybe in the heat of the moment you weren't able to do. But with hindsight, it allows you to see, okay, I could have done this differently. I did this well. I'm going to continue doing this and such. I could do more of or less of this next time.
Yeah, I see so easily when you look back the blind spots you had in the situation, and sometimes I can't understand why I didn't see it at that time. But when you're very in an execution mode, that a lot of leaders are, you have a tendency not to see it. And also, if you don't have the reflection time in front, you're not as good as a leader. So I totally agree. I think one of the best learnings I got, and I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I learned that the leadership is about the strategic thinking, you know, more than sitting in an email box or answering questions. So I think the more you understand that the leadership is about modeling and forming and shaping more than telling and asking more questions, the more I get people with me. And I've done so many mistakes, so I think I think the most important thing is not. I fail fast, I used to say, you know, in our culture in Randstad. And I mean that actually, because I don't care if you fail, but I fear if you don't try. So I really like people I'm trying and really would like to use their playground, let us say. But there's so many people of us are sitting and not using the playground and waiting and adults to come and tell us. But we're all kind of adults, you know, at work. So we can definitely think by ourselves. But it's required a certain level of leadership, I think, to have that culture.
In your experience, what makes an organization not just to survive change, but to grow through change?
I really think transparency. I think openness, transparency, clear vision, clear goal. I think you can't get with you people today when we have so much information if you don't know exactly where you're going. So first of all, you need to know why you're doing it, a clear vision. And I think a lot of leaders today say that or at least I've heard say that they can't have a vision because it's changing so much. I think it's opposite. You really need to have a clear vision and a clear goal. It doesn't matter if you change it, but you need to know where you're going, because there's so much uncertainty that people really need something to hold on. So I really think that you need to have a clear vision. And that people understand why we're doing it and we're going there. And a compelling story that is true, the real story. And I think, you know, I think everyone can change through a transition. And then, as you said, the resilience and the culture comes after that. But I think we need to understand as leaders that if we want to have people with us, most of the people is quite intelligent and very, very good. They need the leaders need to be more transparent. I understand you can't be transparent about everything, but it's a few things you can be transparent about. It's so much more less than I think leaders think about. I really think they need to be transparent in decisions and telling much more, having a much more open dialogue, be frank, open. We spoke about trust. How does trust come? We spoke about trust between individuals, but also psychology, safety in the groups. It's not about not telling. It's about being frank and open and clear, I think. I think it's also a misunderstanding of what psychology safety is. It's not holding hands. It's about having, you're having an environment where I can say, Jason, when you do that, you affect me in a very negative way. I just wanted you to know. And it's also that I'm not fair of the consequences by saying that to you. So I'm very open for feedback, and I'm also very open for a transparent and open culture. But it also needs to be in a kind of a good way. When you give feedback, it also means that you want to be part of the team. We also have feedback, giving feedback, but they don't want to be part of the team or come with suggestions. So I think trust and accountability for me is together. I give you a lot of trust, Jason, but I also give you accountability to own some of that problems together with us. I think a lot of people is just sitting waiting for the leaders to do something. And I don't want to have that kind of culture. I want to have a culture where we have different roles, and of course we have different responsibilities, but we're all employees. So this kind of active employeeship and ownership is something I really, really would like to have in a culture. And I really think if you're going to have a culture, a good culture, you need to have that. You need to have people that buy in on the story, the real story, buy in on the change, buy in on the resilience, buy in on where we're going. But it doesn't mean that they can't disagree with you. Of course, like a family, you disagree, and then you agree where you're moving. If you're 5 in a family and want to go to holiday and everyone wants to say where they're going, of course, at some place you need to decide where to go. You can't go 5 places. So it's a little like I say that in the culture. We are a family. We need to agree on where we're going. And when we have agreed, we need to be agreed to the decisions and help each other. So I think it's a lot of things where you can build resilience, but I think you need to be clear of the vision. People need clear why more than ever, I think. I also think you need to lead with humility and have respect that it takes different times. And I'm not talking about the year, of course, but that you also inform and communication. I think is always, you always get that, in the employee surveys. But I think it needs to be more frequently, like the culture, like you do in your home, you do to your wife or your husband. You're actually correcting each other every day in some way. You are, because you're talking so much. So I think, and then I also think you need to be open to say that, oh, sorry, this is wrong. We made the wrong decision. We need to go there. So it's a kind of a agility in the change. It's not a fixed. You're not fixed when you're just on the change. It's a never-ending story.
So what I hear is that a company culture is a huge part of creating a resilient and agile organization. And so what does agility mean for you beyond processes and organizational charts? I mean, how do you recognize it in people and teams?
I think agility for me is also a little bit about buy-in on the vision, because if you buy on the vision, you will be flexible to make it happen. So I think, of course, I understand we need to have different roles and all of that, but the best team that I see in our organization is that we're working together. That we're taking, okay, do you need some help, Jason? I'm sitting over in another apartment. This kind of mobility in the culture where people are actually having an extra role behavior, where they know the role, but they have extra time, they're helping you. So I think agility is not only to be flexible in the way you are, but flexible in meeting clients, in meeting each other, in meeting talents. It's you're kind of, I would like to use the Norwegian word, but I can't do it because it's English, but it's kind of, you not go with the flow because you know where you're going, but you're not making problems out of small things. So being just, and it's a lot about the behavior, I would say. It's not about systems or structures. I think culture's main purpose is to support the strategy. And if you understand that in the behavior, you will be flexible and you don't need to go and ask your leader. So if you are flexible, you're taking decisions by yourself because you have the shoes on. And that's what I like. And you know that's true in the situation. I will never ask you why you did that, because I think you have the shoes on, you decide. That's ownership for me. And flexibility, agility is about ownership as well. You take ownership of the vision and you do what's necessary in the situation. And I trust you.
I think what you said there, just to riff on what you said there, Marianne, for me, one of the key signatures of a mature mindset, irregardless of age, is the ability to accept responsibility, the ability to accept accountability. When something goes sideways, you take responsibility. Because for me, it's always been something that kind of pushes my buttons when people don't own up to a mistake, when people shift it to someone else. And another one for me is conscientiousness, the ability to think about others, the ability to fulfill promises, the ability to come through different things. And for me, these two, I'm just choosing these two character traits of conscientiousness and accountability. For me, they are signs of a mature mindset. Again, I say this irregardless of age. And those are the kind of people they're like magnets for me, right? I think they're so solid.
I agree. We had a leadership meeting yesterday and we did some exercises. What you bring to the table and what's irritating you. And I think all of us in the leadership team said that we're irritating when people are, not taking the responsibility or the employeeship or the ownership they actually have got, and just waiting for adults to come. so because then you're not agile or flexible or owning. And I really think it's like I say to all my people, it's you need to think like it's your own company. It's your own. It's not your MasterCard. It's the company's MasterCard. Do the things the way you would have done yourself. And I think the ownership there, like you talk about, that is the best employees. You take the best advices and you do whatever you want as long as you are part of this organization for full. And then I trust you.
Yes, definitely. I completely concur with you. So I think there we have an overlap. I mean, you've worked globally. I'm just curious. Maybe this is a very too open of a question, but do you notice there are cultural differences in how resilience or adaptability show up in the workplace?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's huge culture differences. I worked in a lot of different countries, and I would also say cultures, because it could be different cultures in the same country. So I think it's more different than we think, and then we have a tendency, the global companies that I work for, and also a lot of others have a tendency to think you can make a blueprint and then just do exactly the same. So one size fits all. I don't believe in that. One size fits one. Having said that, I also think it's a lot of subcultures in the same company. So subculture could be very good if they are supporting the real culture. So, but resilience and what did you say? How that is affecting culture is affecting resilience?
Yeah, but I was wondering, have you noticed cultural differences in how resilience and adaptability show up in the workplace, in the office?
I think if and I'm not sure, I don't have any science on this, but I really think that the Scandinavian or the Nordic culture has more of this real trust, if I can say that, or psychology safety in the culture. And I don't think that's only in the workplace. I think that's go for the culture and the society and all the things that we live in. So we believe in things in a different way, and I think that is the foundation, for getting resilience. So by just answering that, I think we have a more resilience culture in the Scandinavian. Having said that, it's of course very different from European countries. But I also have worked, a lot with US and other geographics. And normally, if I should say it very bold, but is a little bit black and white, it's they're more afraid of speaking up. They are also more afraid of losing their job. The unemployment rate is maybe higher. So, and the hierarchy is much more in the culture. Yes. So I think if I should measure the resilience, I'm not sure what I should have measured, because they come to job not because they want, maybe, but because they need money. So it's a huge difference. What are we actually measuring? I think the real resilience, as I would like to say, and the real that people have it good and comes from authentic leadership, and that you can be yourself at work. As you're still at work, but you understand you can fulfill a role, you can get career advancement, you can feel that you can say what you want and not getting, kickback on that. So I think the Scandinavian countries are that, but I don't have a kind of science showing that, I think.
No, I was asking more just from your experience. I'm not asking for statistics, because for me, I agree with what you're saying. Living in Scandinavia for the last 2+ decades, I agree. There is something dynamic about this culture. Of course, it's not perfect. I'm not saying that. No. But I've been in many different cultures, and the Scandinavian culture is one that has appealed to me on so many different levels. The secularism, the values, the humanism. Yeah. All of these kind of things really sit well with me. And sometimes you can see cultural clashes when people can't sort of adapt to the Nordics. And, to each his own, but from my perspective as a Canadian, and as also as a Brit, moving to Scandinavia has been an eye-opener for me as to what truly resonates and which really sits deep within me, right? And I've adopted that wholeheartedly, because as a Canadian, I'm not expecting the Nordics to adapt to me. I adapt to the Nordics, right? I adapt to this culture, and I want to interweave and be part of that. And I believe I have done that to some extent. And I agree with you. For me, there is a resilience when you think about living up in the north and it's gray and it's cold and it's dark half of the year. You have to have some sort of mental fortitude to get through it, right?
So very, very curiously now, what is the one thing that you have adapted that was very challenging for you by living here in Norway?
I think it was to come into contact with Norwegians. When I lived in the States for 2 years. It was so easy to meet people, and it flowed and such. Yeah. But what I find here is that once you've made a Nordic friend, once you've come into the culture, they are friendships for life. Again, this is just my own experience.
No, I agree.
They are true, deep, sincere friendships that I know that to the end of my days, they will be friends, per se. And it takes time to come into the culture, but like anything, for me, it's an investment of time and effort and learning the language and learning the culture and adapting to that culture. I don't expect to be specially treated. I am one individual, and, Norway's opened up its arms, and it's up to me to adapt to that, to think and to speak and to be part of that culture, right? And I think by investing in that, I see that. I mean, I don't have 1,000 Norwegian friends. I have a handful of close Norwegian friends that I know I'm very tight with them. They're deep, genuine, transformative friendships, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. So for me, that was the hardest thing, was coming into the culture. But that's on me. I need to invest time to come into this culture, right?
No, it's interesting because I have actually the same experience, but opposite, because I think, and I also heard a lot of people that I know that moved to Norway, that we are very hard to get in a way where, it takes time and to open up and things like that. But when you first open up and you come in with the heart, you get friends for life, as you say. But I think I also lived, in US and other places. And the interesting part is so easy to connect with people. And I was thinking a lot about talking to another scientist about that. And she said that it's not so difficult to understand because in US, for instance, then they have moved after jobs. That they had to make friends, they're moving every second, every third years. Historically, I'm not talking exactly about now. And I think that makes sense because then the networking that we talk about that we think is maybe false or not right, it is. It's not false for them, it's surviving. It's the way they had to be, to connect with people and to get jobs and move to a new place and things like that. And it makes sense. In Norway, we're living where we are working. We don't want to take the train, we want to take the bike and we want to walk and all of that. So I think that it makes sense. But the one thing I wanted to say was that what I actually have thought about is that it's much more fair in other countries than in Norway. Fear of losing the jobs. Of course, that happened in Norway as well, but you have a social system. Fear of speaking up, fear of saying exactly what you want to say, fear of, and much more, it's much more layers in leadership, fear of the leader. Is it also another leadership style?
In the first half of my conversation with Marianne, we explored what it really means to lead through complexity. As CEO of Randstad Norway, Marianne has first-hand experience navigating the pressures of organizational transformation in an unpredictable geopolitical climate. What stood out right away was her focus on flexibility, not just adapting to change, but actively shaping it by balancing business needs with people-centered leadership. Marianne emphasized that authentic leadership starts with self-awareness and alignment with your values. She shared how her daily reflection, practicing gratitude, and learning from setbacks, how it keeps her grounded during turbulent times. Rather than leading through authority alone, she stressed the importance of modeling leadership, living the vows you want others to follow. We also dove into the role of trust in building resilient organizations. For Marianne, creating a culture where people feel safe to speak up and taking initiative, it's essential. She highlighted the value of transparency, clear communication, and fostering psychological safety, especially in Scandinavian work cultures where these traits are often most deeply embedded. We also touched on life in Norway. We reflected on how the cultural context of stability, fairness, and humanism shapes both work-life balance and long-term personal relationships. Now, while it can take time to build deep friendships here, the bonds tend to be stronger and more enduring, much like the foundations of sustainable leadership. Let's slip back into the stream with part 2 of my fascinating conversation with Marianne B. Hagen.
When I worked in London, no one went home before I went home. And when I understood that, I was thinking, oh shit, I can sit home because they're not going home, and also when you understand that they come before you and they CC everyone or every time you. And I said, I don't want to be CC everything. I get 500 emails, but you not to know. I don't need to know. I trust you. So it's huge. Is that resilience? It's a question back to you.
I don't think that's resilience. I think that's actually quite a fragile, brittle culture because, again, I only speak from my perspective, but I don't think there is deep trust there. I think there's this, people are afraid to be caught out. People are afraid not to be shown not doing their work, right? It's like measuring someone clocking how many hours instead of, as the results of their work, right? And so for me, I think that's a very fragile culture, right? I mean, if I feel I got to show up before the boss shows up and I can't leave before he or she leaves, if I feel at 8 o'clock, I have to be 8 p.m. or 10 p.m., I have to constantly be available or have to show on whatever Teams that, he's sitting at his computer. I think it's a culture or organization that needs more trust, that needs a sense of ownership. And again, as you said, the leaders are the ones who can show what we want in the culture, because culture, it is influenced by all aspects, but I think the greatest cultural shift or influence comes from the top down as parents, the children. And I'm not saying employees are children, but there is a hierarchy, regardless if it's a flat organization. What they do on top is going to dictate and resonate as ripples through a pond of how the organization is going to work. I think it comes back to the top of this conversation. Again, these are just my opinions, but you talked about self-awareness. If a leadership team, the management team, the executive team is conscious and cognizant of how they are communicating, how they're building trust, psychological safety, not about all holding hands, everyone's going to be safe, but it's about having hard conversations, right? It's about holding people accountable, about ownership.
Dare to have an open conflict. I think that's what I worked a lot with team development as well, and leadership. And you need to dare to have the conflicts, also to have the accountability and the results. And I think it's a kind of building blocks. If you don't have the trust, you don't dare to have the conflicts. And I think that's why I think maybe if we go back to resilience and the other culture, or in Norway culture, when you have the trust, and I don't think everyone in Norway feels that as well, of course, but when you got the trust in the individuals and also in the team, psychology, safety, you dare to say what you mean, and you dare to have the conflicts, meaning that you get more of the accountability and ownership and things like that. I don't think you can have the results if you don't have the trust as a foundation there. At least you could have more results then, or better.
Yeah, I just want to qualify. Our conversation is about, we're talking about the general population, the general culture. We're not talking about specific things, because I mean, anyone can nitpick in things, anyone can cherry pick. But I think what we're talking about, Marianne, is sort of a more general conversation, a general concept that is found in sort of the Nordics per se. If we could just shift, you were talking about ownership before, and you're passionate about employeeship, as you've called it. How do you cultivate that sense of ownership in people who may not see it themselves as leaders? How do you infuse that ownership, that buy-in into a culture?
Of course, I need to walk the talk. And of course, I need to have a clear vision and why is important. But I think employeeship and ownership is extremely important for me, because I think if not, you need to have 100 leaders on 200 people, and it doesn't give any meaning. I also don't think it goes back to what I believe in. I believe in that people can learn, and I believe in that people having it better if they get a little bit stretch goals. Not everyone, but a lot of people would like to have stretch. They would like to feel that they are succeeding and doing things they haven't done before. So for me, it's about to actually try to foster a culture where the employees take initiatives and think like co-owners, like I used to said, so that you can empower them and also get out autonomy, creative in each of the employees. And I think you need to be together. I think you need, of course, simplifying, Jason, but I think you need to be very transparent so that people can trust you in decision and things like that also. And just say if you can't, of course. But I also think you need to be giving recognition and accountability. And like I said, trust and accountability goes hand in hand for me. But of course, you need to, we're talking about not one size fits all here as well. People are different. But I think in the culture, I would like to make a culture where it's okay to fail, where we are looking at what we are achieving more than what we did as mistakes. And if we did mistakes, let's sit down and learn. So for me, it's not about mistakes, it's about learning. So a kind of a learning environment will also foster for me a culture of creativity, where you dare to go out of your normal role, come with suggestions, ideas. But I also think it's modeling from the leaders. I don't think you get that. You can't start from the bottom if it's not happening on the top either. So I think it's both ways. And I think it's depending on where you're coming from, if it's not normal there, you need to teach. They need to feel that it's safe. You need to start with small wins and show them and encourage them. And I ask a lot of questions that could be very, very sometimes exhausting. But I used to say, if you come to me with something, just if I wasn't here, would you have done? Just to get back again. What do you taken as decision? It doesn't mean that I don't want to be part of the team, but I don't need to control everything. I think you need to understand when you ask a leader. That's why I'm trying to get the matrix of authority down, so that the people that has the shoes on knows exactly more than me to take the decision. So I'm also asking a lot of questions back, because in the beginning, when you take over as a leader, you get a lot of questions and saying, why are you asking me? For instance, I get a question, could I buy a smoothie to my team? And this is real. Why are you asking me about that? Of course, can I do that? And then they're happy. So, and it's so sweet, isn't it? But the point is that don't ask me about that. You're a grown up. If you decide that's okay, of course it's okay. So of course you have different decisions to take. But I think you need to show trust. And sometimes they do mistakes and then say, okay, what could we do better? And then reflecting again, self-awareness, learning. What do you think about that? If you're just putting the numbers then, for instance, in front of you and say, this is your client meetings this week, what do you think? I don't need to say so much. I have a belief that most of people know exactly where they are, either in a football team or in a class, in a math or whatever. People know exactly where they are. You don't need other adults to tell them. So my point is more, where are you? How are you measuring yourself? What do you need from me to support you? So I think I need to be frank if they ask me, but I don't need to judge a lot of people, because they definitely know where they are themselves.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that term that we use, managing expectations. It's about clearly, speaking to the rules of engagement, what is expected. But it's also to ask the employees, is ask people across the organization, what are your expectations? Of course, not everything's going to float. Some ideas are going to sink, but the idea is to have a conversation to populate the map or the culture of the organization, and to understand that, okay, these are the general rules. Like Jason I don't have to go to Marianne to ask, can I buy smoothies or apple pie for my team? Go ahead, do it, right?
Yeah.
Of course, $50 million. Can we buy a helicopter for our team? Well, maybe.
Not sure. Yeah, but I think the interesting part here is maybe this question, why do you ask me? Because if they say, because I'm not sure if I could, and it's a smoothie, I said, why are you not? Because I think this expectation part of the interview is, and they could have had another leader than me before, where they were not allowed and things. But so that's where we need to get at the bottom. Why are you asking the question? What are you actually uncertain? Are you uncertain and you get any kind of fee? Or is it that you just wanted, because if it's just to please me, you don't need, So if you ask a lot of questions as leader, I think that's one of the thing I actually would say that could build up trust as well. Not coming with all the answers, but asking them much more than we normally as leaders do, because we have a tendency as leaders to we come from experts, a lot of us leaders, and a lot of leaders that become leaders like to take care of people and decide and do like that. But I think it's a new era now. It's a new culture where we need to ask more questions and have co-workers and followers and people that really can think by themselves. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't lead. I think everyone needs a leader. Everyone needs someone who's pointing, with a hand. But you're still part of a team. You're still working together, and the influence the employees has should be bigger most of the times, I would say.
It sounds like a clear distinction between managing people and empowering them in that sense, what you're talking about. I was wondering, what's one thing leaders unintentionally do that might discourage ownership on their teams?
So I mean, what they do that could destroy
Like they're not
that.
conscious of it. Like they do
Yeah.
something, and it's not meant to discourage, but unintentionally by accident it does.
I can tell what I do.
Sure.
And I know I got a lot of feedback. I have a tendency to sometimes I'm very energetic. So then I talk too much and I take too much place and I have too much suggestions myself. Of course, then you don't talk. so that's why I learned to ask more questions and to actually come with the answers myself. So that's one thing. And of course, I'm aware of it. It's part of me. So I need to hold myself back sometimes, of course. I also think that leaders, we need to, how do I treat each other as equally? Because we have different roles, but of course we are as smart as we are. We have Gauss curve everywhere, and we are smart, everyone. And also quite interesting to ask for different perspectives. So asking for different perspectives, asking for Jason, I've thought about this. Could you give me some advice from your perspectives? If I'm your leader, what do you see that I don't see? Because you're sitting more with employees. So asking buy-ins, asking them to revisit maybe, or look at your PowerPoint before a town hall meeting, or getting them involved in being part of where we're going, but in different ways. I also would say that leaders, how do you say that? I don't think they always ask for feedback in the correct way, because we have a tendency to say, okay, give me feedback then, Jason. That's kind of a dangerous question. What should you say? What am I conscious of what and what I'm not? So I think if leader could make it more easy, say, I'm actually working with listening, Jason. Listening actively and asking more questions. In the next month, could you please give me feedback on that? It's much more easy for you to give me feedback, and then you start and maybe open up and you have the blind spots because then you encourage people. But if I say, could you give me feedback, and you say something that was a blind spot, I may be like, oh my God. And then you saw my reaction and you think, I can't do this anymore because I saw your reaction. So I think you may need to make it easy to get feedback, not just accept or think that people should give you that without actually being good in taking it. And then when you got the feedback, you need to do something with it as well,
Yeah.
It's
So what I hear you're saying is that to create better ownership and accountability in a culture, it is to encourage people. And through encouraging people, it's not speaking so much, but asking questions, getting them to reflect, getting them to answer up. It's you listening and trying to dive deeper into what they're saying. But it's also setting the agenda that not all ideas float. Some will sink, but let's populate the ecosystem here with different ideas. Let's have divergent thinking per se before we have convergent thinking. And it's through that encouragement and listening and motivating people to speak up that you do create a sense of psychological safety. People feel that they can fail, they can say, they can speak their mind, they can question decisions, not after the decision's been made, because then I agree with you earlier, we've got alignment, we've agreed, this is movement, but there is a time for discussion. And it's also that the leader's not already made the decision, but creating up the false pretense, let's have a discussion, but she's already decided in their head what they're doing.
That's the worst.
Yeah, I mean, talk about killing transparency and credibility in one fell swoop. But what I hear is that ownership is getting people to speak up, to talk about it, where they're not afraid, where you can discover, but you can still have hard conversations. But it's through that over time, by creating a track record, the sense of ownership, accountability, and taking responsibility for successes or failures or foul-ups or whatever, that flourishes over time. But it's an investment. It's about sowing the seed so you can harvest.
It's a huge investment. I think also a lot of leaders forget that they have the responsibility for the structure as well, because a lot of organizations are not structured for giving feedback or structured for having questions or discussions. So I think these arenas is very important. And also, like you said, when is it allowed to come with it, because if things is already decided, you as leader, of course, say that. So it's not getting this around all over again. It's decided from someone maybe over you or anything. So I think the leaders has a responsibility to have a structured way of doing this, in addition to making arenas where the employees feel safe. And they know today is a discussion meeting. We will not, take any decisions. We will discuss and we will come with pros and cons. And this is the kind of meeting. Because I also think we need to help employees to be good and understanding when we can do it and when we cannot do it. And that goes for all of us. And of course, and leaders needs to raise their hand and say when they've done mistakes. And it shouldn't be so difficult to change the decision if it's wrong. It doesn't matter. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
But really, it's sorry. We did. I took a wrong decisions. My fault. But I think it's not about a right or wrong decision. It's about moving in the right direction as quick as possible, for the organization. So I also think a lot of leaders has too much facade. How do you actually say that?
Facade. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
facade.
Yeah. And that they are so afraid of losing that mask that they won't raise the hand and say they did a mistake. I don't care about that, actually. I care about we winning and care about us going in the right direction. And I think that is important. I really think that you couldn't have a facade, because then it's very, very difficult to do mistakes. And you're not walking the talk at all for the company.
No, again, someone who is trying to put up a front, who's trying to show strength all the time, I mean, that in itself is, I think that's fatal in the sense of fragility, right? You're easily broken. And I think there's something to say to humility. The humility that I still learn, the humility that I still make mistakes, the humility that I have not reached the perfection of what a human being is, and that there's constant growth from cradle to grave. There's always going to be something I could be better at and improve and, constantly adapt and evolve to situations. And I think that's what humility speaks to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also makes it easier for people if we are in the same boat and we are all employees, and it will make it easier for them. I also study a little bit about mistakes, and like Amy Everson, not that I'm her, but I also done the same in my own team. When you have a very good team, like Amy Edmondson found by her science that they report most wrong things, in the hospital, the science she did. I had the same. When I have a team that is so good, we have been part of that. We are reporting wrong things every time, all the time, because we are not afraid of it. So it's quite interesting to see how very good teams are not afraid, and how they actually have a speed that is much more moving the organization than a team with afraid of doing mistakes.
I work with a number of leaders that they find that the level they sit at, and we hear this quite often, it's very lonely, and that some of the thoughts and the ruminations and the overthinking and what goes through their head, they find it very hard to sometimes speak to even trusted colleagues, because maybe they're part of the same culture, and that becomes as codependency or co-rumination. I was wondering about yourself, Marianne. When you feel things are slowing down or getting stuck, who do you turn to kick around ideas, to get fresh perspectives, to find a new way through the storm?
It's a little bit of what I spoke about earlier regarding connections, because I don't feel lonely at work. I don't feel lonely at home. I think it's much about that I don't feel lonely with myself. If I should be, I like to be by myself as well. But I always had a mentor or a coach. And of course, there've been some periods, but I haven't had it. I love that. I love to talk with people that is not inside the organization to get perspectives. And I think that is wise. I think everyone should have a coach or a mentor, because that person you're going and speaking to doesn't need to, they can be very frank. They can speak without, anything, and they can be open. So it's not only coaching for me. I also ask for advices. That's why I say mentoring, where you have a adult conversation and
Sure.
you go back and forward and you can trust that person's. I also actually use my grown-up children because they are younger than me, of course, and they have a different perspective. I never talks about what is happening in work. That's not that, but how they would look at the situation in the 20s as they are. And I also have a lot of friends, but I'm very actually quite good in not talking about situations at work, home. In that way, I can talk about how I feel, but I really think that you should be when you have a CEO role like me, I shouldn't take, the situation with me home. I should take them to a coach or a mentor. I think that's at least very important for me because you never know who knows anyone. So I really would like to be confidential and things like that. It's very important for me, and that people can trust me. But I can talk about how I feel home, by standing in a difficult conversations or things like that. But that's something else. But again, I turn to connections, I turn to people to get advices, and I also have this, as I said earlier, this reflection time with myself. But I still comes back to resilience and loneliness and all of that. I still think it's much about values and having a grounded place for yourself. And for me, self-reflection is, and also the self-respect is very important. Even though I would lose my job because I did something, maybe it could happen, you never know, or I didn't do something but I lost it, my life doesn't fall apart. And it could maybe sound silly because my job is extremely important for me, and it's much more than a job. But it's not me. It's not only me. I have a lot of other parts of my life. So I really think that the best leaders actually has a good life out of job, and I think that makes them better in decisions at work, because it's not my. I'm not only a work. I'm a Marianne person. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a friend. I'm a daughter. I'm much more than that. But I think I integrate myself in the job. But I wouldn't fall apart if I lost my job, if you understand. So I think it's also to have. I think that's important, actually, to be a good leader. You need to have some places where you get energy that is not only from work. And that means more for me. The most important will always be my family, whatever happens. That's just how it is.
It sounds your resilience comes from a nuanced life where, CEO or professional, working professional is just one role of a multitude, right? And so if one falls away, you have the nuanced life to fall back on, the different roles or the different labels or whatever we want to call it.
It's not my full identity. That's exactly what I said. It's part of my identity, and I would be very hurt or sad because I'm a feeling person, but I'm not falling apart, if you understand.
Marianne, we are coming close to the end of our conversation. Are there any last thoughts you would like to leave with our listeners today?
I would like to ask you a question.
Shoot.
Yeah, shoot. So what is you speaking a lot to leaders like myself and others, of course. What is the trend that you can see, or a pattern that the leaders has, that you're thinking, what is the resilience? If you should say something that you hear from different people, even though they say different things, what is it from your perspective?
Kind of a common denominator?
Yeah.
For me, I think there's a number of things, but the one thing that rises to my mind is the ability to be self-reflective. I think it's their ability to lead themselves. I think it's not to kid themselves that it's all about positive thinking. I think we all face storms, and sometimes we can't escape the storm and we have to go through it. I think it's the ability for them to understand what is the narrative that their brain that organ is telling them, because it's based, as we all know, we hear it time and time again, on this negative bias, this survival mindset, and it has positive intent, but sometimes it turns a paper tiger into a tiger. And I think the leader, regardless of their male or female, regardless of age, if they have the ability to be, everyone has the ability, but if they are capable and are cognizant to the narrative that is running through their minds, where they can differentiate the mind from the brain, and the mind sits back and sort of not passively observes what the narrative is, collects the narrative, but they can change the narrative. I think also for me, what I also found is that being humble, being vulnerable, and being accountable are also three traits that, though we can tease them apart, I think they are a part of the same element of conscientiousness. And I think the ability for people to fall back and say, look, I don't know everything, that they can fall back and they have their community, they have their tribe, they have their council in which they can kick around ideas, and they're not afraid to kick around those ideas. I think those are the common denominators. I mean, there are many others. I could probably write a book about this. Based on my own trials and tribulations, last couple of years, right?
Talking to a lot of leaders, but what is inherent and what can be learned? What can't be learned?
What can't
I'm putting you on the spot now, but I know you know a lot about the brain as well.
Personally, I think everything can be learned. When it comes to everything we've talked about today, I think all of it can be learned. I think you just need the discipline and the dedication and see it as an investment and not a cost, right? Because a lot of us want to learn something, but I think we're not willing to learn it. I think it's moving want to will. Everything we've spoken about, all the traits, all the values, all the principles we've talked about today, Marianne, and that you being so generous in sharing your own experience, I think all of this can be learned. But sometimes it's like, what's the analogy? It's like a golf. If you want to learn golf, anyone can swing a golf club. But why not go to the golf pro, invest the money? It's not a cost, and just learn the proper patterns and techniques and habits. And then all of a sudden, you're good to go. And then it's just practicing that, right? And so I think, like, you're learning a martial arts, like karate or hapkido or taekwondo or whatever. You go to the dojo, you learn from the experts, the black belts, right? I think it's with anything else. It's to be humble enough to understand that, you know what? I don't know this. I'm just going to go out and find that expert. I'm going to find that teacher, that professor, or what have you.
But then you need to have the time or put aside the time as we talk about training. Because I think that's what leaders don't do. They don't use the time, or very often don't take the time for train.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shift between something I may have already said, between seeing something as a cost and seeing something as an investment. Seeing that there is a return on that investment, that there is dividends, right? And again, it comes back to what you've said so eloquently. It's that growth mindset. It's that you're curious, you learn, you ask yourself questions. Every morning you get up and reflect. When your kids were little, you would go to their bedside just before they had shut-eye and catch some Z's. You'd say, what are you grateful for today? And that shifts the mindset, and you do that over and over and over. I'm sure your adult kids are very socially, emotionally intelligent. They're emotionally resilient,
I don't know. I can't say.
No, when you ask those kind of questions, I don't say this to compliment you. I say this as an observation based upon of experience of all the people I've worked over the years in different clinical or corporate settings. When I hear that, and you do eventually meet their kids, their adult kids or whatever, you can just talk about it. Remember when we were talking about that mature mindset, regardless of age? You just hear that person articulate and explain their perspective on something. It's like, okay, yeah, they're far ahead of most people, right? Just the way they take ownership and responsibility, and there's this sense of humbleness to learn that they don't know everything, right? And it just comes off, completely comes off as sincere and genuine. It's no facade. It's not some sort of false modesty, right?
Hopefully you have modeling some part of that. I
Yeah.
just want to say one thing more, Jason, before
Please.
we
Please.
stop. And that came to my mind. We're talking now because you talked about dedication and things like that. I think the one thing I would like to say to leaders is that the habits is the most important thing, because I think a lot of leaders are putting too much into those summer speech or the Christmas party, and I'm not saying that's not important, Jason, but I think it's every day, like the children and the people you love around you. It's the habits, it's the thing you do every day that is the most important thing. So I think you need to be the leader every day, not just turning up with a good speech or a town hall meeting. So I think what does the people talk about when you're leaving the room? What is actually the brand? And I think that is what goes to my mind as well, that of course sometimes you need to do tough decisions and things like that, but you need to want to be respected for the way you did it, or and also making good habits for everyone. I think that is healthy, and that is long term and not just short term.
I think that's really well what you just said. What do people say once you've left the room? Another spin I use sometimes to take is like your reputation precedes you before you even walk into the room.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right? What is the social currency? Because it's not based, your social currency is not what you think it is. It's what everyone else around thinks it is, right? And if there's alignment between what you believe and what you hear from others, then you're good to go. But if it's skewed, maybe you need to self-check and have a little more of that self-awareness you spoke of at the top of this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And you can never get too much self-awareness. I think it's just positive.
Walk around with mirrors all around you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Marianne, it's been a blast. I found this, it's such a great conversation that you've underscored a lot of what I feel is important, and to hear from yourself, it's like, okay, maybe I am on the right road. And it's been an eye opener for me, and I just really appreciated the time and
same, Jason.
Every
time
conversation.
I speak with you, I don't want to stop. So it's very authentic, and that's what I love about everything. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Empowering leadership doesn't begin with control, it begins with trust. Marianne reminds us that cultures we create as leaders are shaped not by what we say, but what we model through transparency, humility, and the space we give others to grow. Now, we covered a lot of ground today, from building psychological safety and encouraging ownership within teams, to leading with resilience by staying anchored in your values. Marianne's perspective on balancing strategic goals with a people-first mindset, well, that offers a much-needed lens for leaders facing change and uncertainty. And as I promised at the start, the most significant insight Marianne shared with us was this: the most impactful leadership happens when we stop trying to have all the answers and instead start asking better questions. That shift from directing to empowering, well, it fosters the kind of culture where people take initiative, feel heard, and grow. And that's the foundation of long-term resilience and performance. Marianne, thanks again for such insightful and eye-opening conversation. I really do enjoy our conversations. We'll have to meet up soon again. Well, folks, if you're interested in reaching out to Marianne, I will leave her contact information in the show notes. And thank you for listening. And if this conversation has sparked something for you, well, feel free to share it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And remember, life is about leading from the inside out. And until the next time we meet, keep well, keep strong, and we'll speak soon.